All right, we're here with council candidate Ellis Raskin. Ellis, we saw you 2 years ago. Glad to have you back going forward again. Why don't you give a little introduction for your campaign?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure to see you all, and thank you so much for taking your time out of your Saturday to speak with me. As you folks know, I'm Ellis Raskin, running for City Council. I'm the chair of the Santa Monica Planning Commission, and I'm involved in a variety of other roles locally. I first got involved in politics in Santa Monica, as many of you know, fighting evictions in the Pico neighborhood. Our efforts were successful in keeping people in their homes, including one particular project over at 21st in Virginia. And since that time, I've been involved in a variety of other ventures locally, including continuing to advocate for renters and continuing to advocate for a more just and inclusive city. Through my work in the Planning Commission, I've helped our city tackle our broader regional housing issues and other development issues. And what's important to me is making sure that our city is one that's equitable and inclusive for everyone. It's a city where folks are getting priced out all the time. I'm a renter in the Pico neighborhood, and I'm seeing folks paying as much as 60 to 70% of their income towards rent, and folks getting pushed out of our city all the time. I hope that I can work with all of you in helping to build a brighter future for our city with many challenges ahead, and look forward to talking with all of you over the next half hour or so about how we can make that happen.
Thanks, Ellis. So I wanted to start off by asking you about one of your top priorities that you listed, which is decorum and good governance. And you said that you promised to introduce an ethics code during your first term to keep our leaders accountable to the public. And then later on, you go on to sort of talk about some of the missteps that have happened with council recently. So, what would be in the ethics code that as you think about it in the early stage, that would be in an attempt to counter some of the missteps that have happened and make sure that we safeguard our council from repeating those mistakes?
Yeah, well, thankfully, there are some good examples we can look to around California. Oftentimes, these ethics code focus primarily on making sure that the electorate is informed about what their elected officials are doing, making sure that folks who are elected don't have conflicts of interest, be it financial, personal, or otherwise. But perhaps most importantly is ensuring that there's some sort of enforcement mechanism to make sure that our elected officials are held accountable for potential ethics violations. I think we need to have an independent ethics commission locally that can investigate potential violations and hold folks accountable. There in cities that do this successfully. There are opportunities for citizens to bring grievances to an independent body that can look into things like Brown Act violations, for example, in a way that can hold people accountable, which frankly isn't really happening at our city council level, and I think it needs to happen.
Great. Okay. Who's got the next question? Sam, you're up.
Hey Ellis, just wondering, what have you learned from your time at the Sierra Club and what takeaways would you bring to a possible tenure at the city council?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Great to see you again this Saturday. It's an interesting question. You know, as folks know, I'm an elected member of the executive committee of our local Angeles chapter of the Sierra Club. I was elected just this last November, and in my professional work, I work as an environmental attorney and tackle a broad range of issues on behalf of public agencies and other stakeholders relating to sustainability, access to open space, and other similar issues. Here in Santa Monica, one of the key environmental issues is making sure that we can connect folks who work here, who commute sometimes 3 or 4 hours a day and contribute tremendous amounts of greenhouse gases into our environment, that we can connect them to housing opportunities locally. That's really, I think, a really key issue that we're going to have to address as the folks who are being elected now are going to be preparing our seventh cycle housing element. But there are a bunch of other environmental issues locally that I'm really passionate about. For example, making sure that the disparate impacts of living in proximity to the 10 freeway are appropriately addressed, making sure that folks have access to our beach, making sure that our water is being sourced sustainably. So those are just some examples, and these are some things I've worked on through my time on the Planning Commission and should I have the honor of being elected, will prioritize as a council member.
All right, Isabel.
Hey, Ellis. So I was heartened to hear you even starting off your talk, you're talking about affordability in Santa Monica. So I know this is a very complex topic, but just kind of in a nutshell, we know it's the rents, and the housing costs are just so high and keep rising. What can we do to have more affordable housing in Santa Monica?
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. I really appreciate the question. This is something that impacts me personally, my family personally, and impacts many Santa Monicans personally. Just to share a quick anecdote, just this last summer, my 19-year-old niece moved in with us. She's in her first year at Santa Monica College, and for most folks who graduate high school in Santa Monica, living here is completely unaffordable, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't be a community where folks who have grown up here don't have an opportunity to come back and have a meaningful opportunity to have a home here. Obviously, we're not going to solve our housing problem by not building more housing, but we need to make sure that we do it intentionally in the right way. If you look at the numbers I shared in my questionnaire, you'll see that we're meeting our numbers for market rate units. In fact, more so than we were assigned through the RENA allocation. But we're not getting there in terms of the number of affordable units that we need to build. Obviously, I don't think inclusionary units have gotten us to where we needed to be alone. We need to leverage public finance and public land in a way that'll meaningfully get us affordable housing units and affordable housing opportunities. Um, this is a subject I could talk about for hours and would love to talk more about this offline. But hopefully that's an introduction to generally how I would approach the problem.
Thank you, Lynn.
Hi, Alice. Your questionnaire answers were so detailed. They were very interesting. And related to what you just said, when you mentioned that in order to meet our regional housing need allocation goals, we need everything possible to incentivize affordable housing production. And my question or my ask is to give some examples of how you would incentivize affordable housing production.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Obviously, this is something that the city has looked to through the 6th cycle housing element programs, and it's one where the council members who get elected are going to have to really take a hard look at this in our 7th cycle numbers as well. So on the private side, you can try to add additional bonuses for folks through adding additional inclusionary units. We've seen that now on the state level through things like AB 1287, where we've tried to incentivize adding more inclusionary housing for giving things like more height or more density. I'm not entirely confident that that's going to get us to exactly where we need to be. I think what we need to do is to look at how we can leverage public financing through things like Measure GS, and leverage our public land in a way where we can get things that have a much higher proportion of affordable housing units, ideally 100% deed restricted affordable housing units on those sites, to get us to where we need to be.
Okay, Mike.
Hey, Ellis. So in an effort to actually have some resources to create affordable housing or to at least keep people housed or already housed through rent subsidy programs, we've twice now passed Measure GSs. The first one, though, City Council has been using as a piggy bank to pay other obligations, and it was about $36.5 million to that. And we'll see whether they're going to take more. The second one was politically opposed. That didn't work. The voters voted for it. Then there was a legal attack on it. That didn't work. And so now we have Cypress Equity and Madison Capital funding an effort to try and exempt all existing residential building so that, for example, the Shores and Douglas Emmett could sell that without making any contribution to affordable housing or the schools in our community. So if you're on council, what's your view on each of those problems? And on the second one, which is an electoral one, if it makes it to the ballot, what can we count on you to do, if anything, to see that the voters of Santa Monica adopt the position you hold.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And it goes without saying that I really appreciate the work that you and others on this call have done to advance the causes that you're talking about. I know that you and John and others have really worked hard to achieve the goals that we share in accomplishing just building a better Santa Monica through these really important measures. With respect to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, yeah, obviously we need to get the money back there as soon as possible. We've got a few challenges ahead in terms of our municipal budget. Obviously, I talked a little bit more about that in my questionnaire, but for me, refunding the trust fund is going to be a top priority. This is something that impacts folks locally, perhaps more so than, well, many other things, but having an affordable place to live is crucial, and we're not going to do that without the Affordable Trust Fund money. With respect to the attempts to uh, uh, essentially stop certain parts of Measure GS, I'm absolutely opposed to that, and I've already spoken out against that publicly. The Measure GS that we passed in 2022 is an absolutely critical funding source for our schools, for local housing, and I oppose any measure that would essentially frustrate those goals. And hope that generally answers your questions, and happy to answer any follow-ups.
Okay, anyone? Oh, there we go. Keith.
Hey, good afternoon there, Ellis. How you doing today?
Hey, Keith, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Um, in your remarks related to seeing a sound financial future, there were a couple things inside of that were seemingly compelling, as other municipalities around us are uh, vacating or not hiring staff. You seem to suggest that one thing that the city might do is to hire more internal staff as employees of the city of Santa Monica versus, hiring outside vendors. And then you talked a little bit about increased collaboration with regional and other state partners to sort of leverage public financing. So can you talk a little bit about those things, about how those things may assist with overall budget and functioning for the city?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. It's an important question, and certainly our financial future is something that's going to be a priority for me, should I be elected to the council. With respect to the staffing issue, this is oftentimes a counterintuitive approach to things when folks think about how to staff things. But the fact of the matter is, at least on the municipal side of things, it's generally more expensive to outsource staffing than it is to handle things internally. Specifically with the city attorney's office, generally you can accomplish things at about half the cost if you handle it through internal staff as opposed to hiring outside counsel. The same is true for many other positions in city government. So when we talk about right sizing city staff and potentially restoring positions that were cut during the COVID crisis, I think this is going to be a good opportunity to potentially realign our budget priorities and local staffing priorities in a way that will meaningfully achieve the budget priorities that we're talking about. And in terms of partnering regionally and at the state level, obviously we're in a position locally where our budget needs all the help it can get. I know that other folks in council have really been leading the role in collaborating with other partner agencies locally. For example, Carolyn Terosis has been fantastic at leading the charge and partnering with other elected officials and other agencies at the county level to make sure that funding is available to help supplement local funds. All of this is going to be absolutely critical moving forward, and I look forward to using the experience I have both as a land use attorney, planning commission chair, and working with public agencies across Southern California to help connect us to those pots of money that we potentially could be taking advantage of.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, if anyone has one, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll bring up another question from your questionnaire. You talked about how candidates should be asked more about how to support retail opportunities for low-income residents, and you mentioned the 99-cent store that just closed in Pico. So I agree with you that we should have had more. That was one of my regrets on the questionnaire, is that we should have had more about economic development, and your answer just now to Keith definitely, started on that. But to address the point that you raised with regard to low income opportunities, what do you think is the solution there?
It's a tough one. The loss of the 99-cent store in the Pico neighborhood really hurt. I know a lot of folks on my block and in the general neighborhood who really relied on that as really the only low cost retail opportunity in the area. Just a block away is Whole Foods, which obviously is unaffordable to many. It's a little bit of a walk to get to Ralph's over at Cloverfield and Olympic, which has some affordable options. But we need to really be thinking about how retail closures like that have a tremendous impact on our local community. Obviously, there's a limited amount that elected council members can do to bring in retail partners, but we do need to make sure that we're doing everything we can. Talking to folks in the retail community, making sure that folks in the city manager's office and others are proactively bringing in retail opportunities to serve the needs of our residents. But there's also a zoning component to that, obviously, to make sure that sites like the 99-cent store are structured in terms of the zoning code in a way that will incentivize bringing in low-cost retailers like that. I'm hopeful that we can make progress as a community to bring in something to fill that void, but it's going to take hard work, and it's going to take having elected officials that understand the impacts of retail closures like that on our community and understanding the real needs of folks who are spending, like I said, 70% of their income on rent and don't have money to spend at high-end retailers in our community. So again, that's another one of the many priorities that I think we need our elected officials to address.
Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah, talking about retail in our city, the downtown Santa Monica, the promenade were really hit hard by the pandemic, and then there was the mass looting event. What do you think about the development of downtown and the promenade? And I'm going to throw into that Santa Monica place that put in those really high-end retail stores. What do you think can be done to revive that area and help some of our small businesses?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Over the past few years, the Planning Commission has had a few conversations about the future of the promenade. And obviously, this is an evolving topic as we move forward into the future of retail on the ground and onto the future of our new economy. Certainly, we need to make sure that Santa Monica is a place that is inviting to folks from around the globe. And so I think one component of that, which I'm glad to see has happened, is supporting labor peace at our hotels so that we can make sure that we have tourists coming in from out of town at hotels where we have labor peace. But specific to the local economy, there's an interesting evolution going on the ground. What we're seeing, at least in places like Santa Monica, is an interest in more experiential opportunities at retail storefronts. For example, the Barbie experience was a really interesting and unique opportunity to leverage perhaps new opportunities for folks to come in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. And understanding the future of the interface between local and online retail, I do think we need to leverage more experiential opportunities and figure out how we can use storefronts along the promenade in a way that reimagines the space. For example, the pickleball center over towards the top of the promenade, I think, is a great example of how we can use underutilized retail space in a way that really makes sense. But obviously, this is going to be an iterative process that it's going to involve not only the folks at council, but also making sure that we're working regionally with local partners in preparation for things like the Olympics, in preparation for our next housing element cycle, to make sure that this is part of a much broader conversation.
Okay, I've got one for you. So you indicated on your questionnaire that prior to 2020, you were not registered as with any party. You were declined to state. and but that you described yourself as an independent progressive Democrat, much like Bernie Sanders. So that's we're a Democratic club, but we also love Bernie Sanders, and he drew the largest crowd the club has ever had the time he came to speak to us. And he had a nice turnout in both of his campaigns when he came to speak in Santa Monica. So there's nothing negative about Bernie at all, but I did want to ask you, since we're the Democratic Club, prior to 2020, I mean, that's a good 10 to 15 years of your adult life where you actively chose not to be a registered Democrat. So, what sort of issues or philosophies were you going with in that decision where you didn't want to be part of the Democratic Party, and what ultimately led you to decide to become a registered Democrat?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think a large part of the answer to that is rooted in perhaps a young idealism that spilled over through my 20s and later into my life. Part of it was influenced by seeing Bernie Sanders, who was himself an independent. I think perhaps in part to disagree with some of the ideological positions taken by the mainstream members of the Democratic Party. And to be clear, during that time, I never voted for Republican candidates. I was always voting for folks in the Democratic Party, Green Party, and other more progressive parties. But yeah, there were certain positions that folks in the Democratic Party had taken that I think influenced this to some extent. For example, not at least initially being on board with supporting LGBTQ plus equity, not really being on board with certain environmental programs. So over time, I came to the realization that we really all need to work together as part of a bigger tent within the Democratic Party to achieve our progressive goals and progressive aims. And I'm glad I made the choice to register as Democrat when I did, and to some extent regret that I didn't do it sooner.
Great. Okay, we'll go to Sam.
When or if you become a city council member, how will you ensure to stay connected with the community and follow up on communication?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the folks who know me know that I'm pretty accessible. Answer a lot of emails. I spend so much of my week outside of my professional life, just meeting with folks in the community, just grabbing coffee, just grabbing dinner with folks and talking about the issues. And I look forward to continuing that. I mean, I think most, if not all of you folks in this call have got my cell number and know how to reach me, and always happy to take your call and to take some time to talk about the issues. The reality is that folks in Santa Monica who are elected officials really need to hear from community members. They need to understand what's going on the ground. And so having that channel of communication is really crucial to being an effective elected official. And I'm so glad that I've had an opportunity to meet with so many of you folks over the past few years to talk about issues that are important not only to you, but to folks who you know and to the broader community.
Okay, last call. Any last questions? Okay, not seeing any. So thanks, Ellis, for being here. Appreciate your time, and good luck on the campaign.
Yeah, thank you again, everyone, for taking your time out of your Saturday on this holiday weekend. Democracy is not something that comes easy, and I appreciate the opportunity as a candidate to work with all of you. And certainly, to the extent any of you want to talk further, please feel free to give me a call. You know where to find me, and look forward to talking to you all further.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ellis.
Thank you.